Alrighty then, my Jedi and Sith friends, hello and welcome back to another Star Wars video. Thank you for joining me once again as we take another dive into the galaxy far, far away, and today we are returning to Ahsoka Season 2. It's so great to see this many fans excited again. The first season had so much promise. Those first 6 episodes and the last few minutes of Episode 8 constitute some of my favourite Star Wars TV in general, and as Dave Filoni recently teased, as Hayden Christensen recently said, Season 2 is about to up the stakes. Baylan is seeking a power that Anakin said has the potential to end wars, and back home in the known galaxy, Thrawn is back and has declared war on the New Republic. He doesn't seem to acknowledge the new government and just perceives them as a group of rebel rogues. It's why he still calls them the Rebel Alliance. But did you know, my friends, that this trailer is hiding a couple of huge secrets? And in this video, I want to continue some of the conversations we were having in my trailer breakdown and go a bit deeper with some of those reveals. And we have to begin with the one character that everyone is talking about, and that's this guy. Who was he? What is his purpose in the narrative of this story, and why is he important? Well, for one thing, he appears in the opening Clone Wars flashback. Anakin and Padawan Ahsoka have been deployed by the Republic to confront and fight a fallen Jedi who turned to the dark side. At this time, we have no idea if he was working for Dooku or if even Palpatine was aware of him, but he's definitely gone rogue, and with the way he killed off his own clone troopers, he's giving off Pong Krell vibes. But let's try to answer the question of who this guy actually is. Given recent Lucasfilm history where we as fans like to speculate beyond what was written, it's very likely this is a character we've never heard of. A character who was just created for this show. But it's fun to theorize nonetheless. And to my mind, there are 2 theories that stand out as genuinely feasible. The first is that this might be the Disney Star Wars canon iteration of Exar Kun. I spoke about this character the other day, because thanks to Solo a Star Wars Story, the character is canon. Dryden Voss's desk was made of a stone taken from the Temple of Exar Kun. The only problem is the disparity between where he exists in the Star Wars timeline, and this is both in Legends and canon. He existed during the Old Republic, and this is restated in Disney canon in the 2020 reference book, Lightsabers and Jedi Equipment. They say, quote, Exar Kun was a dark lord of the Sith who flourished thousands of years before Darth Sidious and his Sith apprentice Darth Maul. Again, this could have just been a placeholder that could be undone. These days, canon is rather flexible, so if they want this to be Exar Kun, they could retcon this very small line. Not that I think they should. It wouldn't be unprecedented for Disney to take a character from one time period and reintroduce them at a later point. But the second theory, which I find the most plausible given the way Dave Filoni works, is that this might be Marok. Years before the rise of the Empire, and years before he joins the Inquisitorius. Marok may not have been someone who was forcibly turned to the dark side after Order 66. His fall already began years before the Clone Wars came to an end, and my theory is that he has a very similar fate to Barriss Offee. He's gonna fight Anakin and Ahsoka, and then be arrested by the Republic. Spend a year in prison between 20 BBY and 19 BBY, and then after Order 66, he is used as an Inquisitor. In his case, the First Inquisitor. His designation was literally the First Brother, and he was so valuable and powerful that when he eventually dies, he was revived using Night Sister magic. And I also notice an interesting parallel to the Clone Wars Season 5. Before Ahsoka walks away from the Jedi Order, in light of her questioning Anakin and asking how Jedi could do such awful things, they both seem very aware of rogue Jedi who they've encountered in the past, and now we know that another one is this guy. And just a bit more food for thought, I wonder if this flashback is going to explore the theme of Jedi becoming disillusioned with the rest of the Order, and if so, the dialogue between Anakin and this rogue is gonna be pretty fascinating. Maybe he's going to be reflecting on sentiments that Ahsoka felt. Could this be a flashback where we see Anakin going a bit too far, giving into his rage, his aggression, and some of the early Vader coming out of him, similar to what we saw at the Tusken camp in Attack of the Clones? Even at this very early stage, the Jedi were no longer simply peacekeepers. They had become generals of war, and increasingly abandoned their core beliefs. Someone who was already struggling with anger, resentment, disillusionment could have gradually begun embracing the dark side during the conflict, and as we see in this trailer, killing their own clones. I saw another theory that stated this might have been one of Dooku's secret apprentices. It might even be Dooku's Padawan Rael Averross. We never found out what happened to him. Maybe he also turned to the dark side. But there is another fascinating component of this character that no one is talking about, and that is the color of his lightsaber. You'll notice it's not quite blue and it's not quite green, it's a shade of turquoise or teal, which kind of reminds me of one of Cal Kestis' lightsabers, but Dave Filoni is often very deliberate with his choice of shade. For instance, the lightsabers of Baylan and Shin, they're not quite red, they're orange, harkening back to Darth Vader's lightsaber in the original Star Wars posters. In-universe, there's been speculation about dark Jedi connections, and I wonder if there's a symbolism with this character's lightsaber. Is there a chance they're drawing from the expanded universe, and when he was knighted he was a mixture of consular and Jedi Guardian? But in this sequence, the turquoise really stands out against Ahsoka's green lightsabers and Anakin's blue. So it's clearly not a mistake of the lens or a lighting issue. This was a deliberate creative decision, and I'm hoping Dave Filoni tells us the rationale behind it. But moving on, my friends, there is another secret character hidden in this scene. As Thrawn makes himself known and marches down the bridge of the Chimera, on the right hand side we have a potentially very deep cut to the recent Timothy Zahn canon Thrawn books. It might just be a random female bridge officer, but this might just be Karen Farrow, a Commodore from the Imperial Navy who was loyal to Thrawn. She served as Thrawn's second in command, and over time, Thrawn came to rely on her judgment. She's a very strong tactician in her own right, and might have been waiting for Thrawn's return, probably working with Captain Pelion. Before Thrawn and Ezra were launched by the Purgle towards Peridia, one of his final acts was to promote Farrow. She was to lead the 11th Fleet. She would leave the ship for Coruscant in order to start her pre-command orientation. But after the Battle of Endor, I assume she remained loyal, may have avoided New Republic prosecution, and now is part of the remnant. I'd be very curious if this was her, and if so, it's only a matter of time until Eli Vanto is brought into live action. And finally, my dear friends, something else which occurred to me in this trailer which I think is worth talking about has to do with Senator Giorno. In Season 1, he was part of the trial of Hera Syndulla and further denied the threat of Thrawn's return. I've seen a few theories say that he might defect to the Remnant in this season, but I think that's pretty much impossible. Why? Because we know for a fact he's one of the few characters who remains loyal to the cause, even all the way up until the sequel trilogy. And his son, who is born around the time of Ahsoka's Season 2, is the main character of Star Wars Resistance, Kaz. It'd be interesting to see if Senator Giorno mentions that his wife is pregnant during this season. He might be dislikable and he might be arrogant, but he isn't an Imperial spy. And by the way, my friends, he did not die on Hosnian Prime, which means he might even be around in Star Wars Starfighter, you never know. But those are just some of my thoughts and theories about a couple of things I noticed. If you missed my full trailer breakdown, please go and check that out. Please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, share your thoughts and theories in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.